Hello everyone. Um, sometimes I watch boxing videos online. It's a sport I follow. So I watch fights between well-known fighters. And occasionally you'll get these clips at the side. You get a list of recommended videos and so on. And most of them will be other boxing matches. But sometimes what comes up is street fights. um, what cyberspace is like. You get sort of one thing leads on to a wide range of other things. Um, it's extremely difficult to regulate this because, for example, on YouTube, unless I'm mistaken, they have an office staff of perhaps 50, 100 at the most, and this is a website used by up to 1 billion people around the world, so it's extremely difficult to regulate, and therefore they rely on users. What I want to talk about is the nature of these so-called street fights, why I believe they're different from sanctioned fights, and why I believe it's a problem. Firstly, most of these street fights involve young people, usually aged between, let's say, their mid-teens and early 20s. And I find it troubling that so many of them seem to actually be quite good at fighting. They seem to know the skills involved. But that really isn't the point. The point is why they're fighting in this way in the first place. Based on comments I've seen on a lot of these videos, a lot of the time it tends to be sort of personal disputes. Not always over a boyfriend or girlfriend, although that sometimes is the issue. But more often it seems to be over some stupid thing that they're trying to prove about who's physically stronger, or over a misinterpreted comment or whatever. But it is troubling watching this because you see, and I have seen a few of the videos, I could hardly comment on something if I hadn't seen some of them to know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I have watched a few of them. But they tend to fight like it's some sort of computer game or something. Like they tend to actually, in some cases, have some quite good skills. To me, that's actually quite troubling. The fact that these young people are fighting in this way. But what I find disturbing about it is the fact that it appears to be going on with no control whatsoever. Now, there's several problems with this. When you have a fight situation that there's no controls, like there's no referees in this fight, right? There's no ringside, there's no doctor, there's absolutely no controls in place whatsoever. Sometimes you see it taking place next to a busy road, right? Now all it takes is one of those people to be hit down onto the road, and you can imagine the possible scenario. It's there's a real potential here for someone to get seriously hurt, and that's a big problem. And I think it's tragic that it's because it's just so stupid. Violence should be. I'm not a pacifist. I believe there's times violence is justified, but it should be a last resort, not used to prove a point in this sort of way. It's just plain stupid. These young people may be physically strong, but they need to realize in the adult world, you don't settle problems by beating someone up. And to those who say like they want to call me all the names under the sun, good, fuck you, I don't care. I'm just a guy who recognizes the problem with this, and I have something called some fucking values. And those who say, oh, well, if you don't like it, or watch a video, or something like that, I do have a right to comment. I do have a right to my opinion, and I do think it's a problem for wider society. Actually, a lot of them seem to be from the United States, but there's plenty to be found from the UK as well, from the Philippines, probably from every country. I'm just saying a lot of them do seem to be from the US. And I wonder, is it a byproduct of some trash TV? The likes of Jerry Springer and so on. I'm not saying that people watch that then they go out and fight. I'm not directly correlating that, but I do wonder, was this as common in the past as it is now? But what's more disturbing is not necessarily that the fights are taking place, it's the fact they're then put online to be viewed by millions of people. And what troubles me about this is we assume that it's a 50-50 situation, right? That they're settling disputes, and maybe a lot of the time that is the case. But I suspect in other situations there's bullying going on here, whereby one of them has been pressured into the situation, and they have to then save face by proving they're strong enough to do it or something. This is very unsettling, and there's many of these videos you can see clear signs that there's some sort of peer pressure going on. Sometimes you see one of them trying to get out of it, but because they're humiliated or whatever, they're pressured into doing it. That's very disturbing, because it's basically just a form of bullying. I'm not saying they're all like that. Some of them, both of them, clearly want to fight. In those cases, I say, well, look, if you want to do that, if you want to get into martial arts, then go and join your local kickboxing club, your boxing club, whatever, MMA even. But at least all those things have some rules. At least they have doctors. At least they're regulated. Now, to people who don't like violence, I fully understand their position as well. I'm not a pacifist. I do follow boxing, so I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say I'm against all violence. But I don't think it's hypocritical to support a sanctioned sport and then oppose street fights. I don't think that's hypocritical, because there's a clear difference between the two. A very clear difference. In a boxing match, yes, there's risks involved, but it's a regulated situation. The fighters are prepared, they have training, they're not forced into the situation, generally speaking. Yes, there is some psychological issues involved, and boxing is not perfect. I'm not saying it is. Goodness knows, I've critiqued the sport, but I do see a clear difference between a regulated sport and a stupid street fight. I mean, really, if one of those guys, or girls, a lot of them are girl fights, got seriously injured, who in that crowd would come to the first aid? No, they're just there to watch a fight. They couldn't care less. In a boxing match, you always have a doctor ringside. There's professionals there on standby in case something like that happens. Now, I know there's people who'd say, oh, well, it should all be banned. I appreciate their argument, but I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that these street fights should be, the problem is here, the people who post these online feed off the fact that they're viewed by millions of people. They don't care about the people in the video. They just want their people to watch their videos, get subscribers and so on. So ultimately it comes down to user responsibility. Now, I'm not going to preach, I'm not going to say don't watch the videos, right? But I'm just sharing my thoughts. I think it's unsettling. I think it's a problem, and let's not assume they're always in a situation, all the people involved in those fights want to do it. Sometimes it's peer pressure, sometimes they're humiliated into doing it. And in many cases there's a clear bullying scenario going on. But, as I say, there is big differences between what's going on there and a regulated sport. Like I say, martial arts sports are far from perfect. There's many areas I can see improvement, yeah, that's true, but nevertheless, it is true that there's a lot more control in those sports. I don't think you could dispute that. There's a set number of rounds, the fighters are trained, there's a doctor ringside, all those factors. There's police on standby and security in case the crowd gets unruly. In a street fight, there's absolutely none of those controls in place whatsoever. So it's more dangerous because anything could happen. What's to stop one of those guys or girls being thrown onto the ground, hitting their head on a rock or something, and then what you get then is a situation whereby some stupid minor dispute gets turned into a tragedy. To me, that's just that's a potential, and actually it has happened. I have heard cases here in Britain of some stupid schoolyard fights and ending up at a tragedy because someone. No, I differentiate between this and justified cases of self-defense, or if someone's defending their girlfriend, for example. Say, I'm not going to lie. If I was with a girlfriend and some drunk decided to start trouble with us, of course I'm going to defend my girl. So I'm not a pacifist. I'm not saying that violence is never justified. But most of the time it should be avoided. And certainly not for reckless reasons like just trying to prove a point. You should have self-control and just try and solve disputes in another way, because this is just stupid. And people then say things like, oh well, you know, then they try bringing in like about fighting skill, like that's got any relevance whatsoever. Some of these kids are tough, I know that, but to me that, if anything, that's all the more disturbing, that they are acting like they're computer characters or something. This is the real world, and in the real world people can get seriously injured. So I think YouTube needs to step up, and I appreciate they have a small staff. They can't do everything, so it is user responsibility as well. But I also think sometimes they don't act fast enough to pull down these videos. It's because sometimes in some cases they have millions of views. That's really unsettling. So I think those cases, especially when people, I have flagged videos, I've come back and I've seen they're still there. So, I appreciate the YouTube staff can't do everything, and I would say anyone out there who agrees with me, do flag these videos for youth violence, and then where it says a reason, echo the points I've made if you agree with them. This is nothing to do with preaching. It's nothing to do with being like whiter than white or something. But it's just common sense, really. And it's nothing to do with freedom of speech. This is nothing to do with speech. This is an action. We're talking about young people here. Some of them are in the young teens, So I think it is legitimate for adults to be concerned about that. Thanks for watching.